Today's daf is daf Ayin Ches. We are up to the Gemara here, about 12 or 13 lines on top of the page. Amar Abaya. We're talking about a Kohen Gadol who's not allowed to marry a widow, and an ordinary Kohen cannot marry a Grusha Kohen as well. A Grusha, someone divorcee, a Zain or a Halal. Amar Abaya. Abaya said, Kiddush. What happens by a Kohen Gadol? He's not supposed to marry an almana, a widow. So what happens if he does? There are two avedas, he said. Is the aveda of la yikach and the aveda la yichal zare. We don't mention la yichal. I shouldn't. That's straight here. We don't mention also the third one la yichal zare. We're talking about a case we didn't really consummate it, so there is no children involved. So Abai comes along and says an interesting thing. He says Kiddush. Let's say the Kohen Gadol went ahead, or the Kohen Hedjit, and he got engaged with one of these women he's not supposed to, which is there's an Isser, like you'll get Malchus for that Avera. Baal, if you then go ahead and consummates it, like you'll get Malchus for that Avera. Kiddush, if he just got engaged, what Avera did he commit? Mishum lo yikach. It says in the pasuk that you should not take. Right, it says that almana, grusha, halal, zayin. It's all about a kohen gadol, but we compare kohen headed to it. It says es eila lo yikach, don't take it. So that's not really yikach. Yikach is kedushin. And bal, if you actually had relations like malchus, mishum lo yichal. If you consummated it, you get malchus because it says lo yichal after the kedushin. We're talking about it was kedushin, and the next stage was bal. You get another malchus. You get another malchus, which is what lo yichal. Says the Pasuk, Rabba says, Boal, Rabba says, no. Kedushin on its own, you won't get any Malchus. Rabba says, Boal, if you do Boal, then like you get Malchus. And Loi Boal, then you'll get, Rabba says, I agree, you'll like two Avedas. But when you get two Avedas, only after you basically were Boal, then we say, well, you committed both Avedas. But if a Loi Boal ain't a Loika, if you did not consummate it, then you don't even get Malchus for having gotten your engaged. It says a pasuk, lo yikach, you shouldn't take, vil lo yichal. It says lo yikach, vil lo yichal. So it sounds like, when do we say lo yikach? Only if it turned into a chilul. Only if you consummated it, then you did two avedas. Matam lo yikach, lo yichal. Now the Gemara will give us a number of exceptions where Abai and Rabba don't argue. So first, moida Abaya. Abaya will concede that even though you get malchus just for the kedushin itself, but a kohen is not allowed to marry a widow, and just getting engaged already is allowed to get malchus. Because why? The Torah separate them as two separate lavim, so therefore each one is a separate stage and each one is independent of the next one. But if a Yisrael, if a Yid takes back his divorced wife after she married somebody else, and then she became a widow, she was divorced, even though the pasuk says don't take her back, so l'chayda, that means don't get her engaged, you should get malchus for that. By his maid, in this case, he won't get malchus until he actually consummated. She kiddush v'loy bal, if he just got her engaged, his former wife, and didn't have any relations, she ain't like it. Why not? Because it says in the pasuk, don't take her back. Don't take her back as a wife. So only if you behave with her as a wife, then you get the malchus also for likach, for taking her back. Otherwise, you don't get the malchus for that. He agrees with Rava. You have to do the second act in order to get both of these. You don't have it. Rava. On the other hand, Rava is made that sometimes they're independent when the kohen gadol ba'almana, when it comes to a kohen gadol and almana, she'im bo. Let's say reverse the order. Let's say he had relations, but like kiddush, but he didn't go through the first stage of having her engaged. Sheleika, he'll get malchus for the beila. Why? Because the lo yichal zare ba'amav orachmana barichil. There's a separate law that says don't go ahead and be mechal yazaroi, and he went ahead and did because he consummated it. So even though he bypassed the first stage of lo yikach, nevertheless he will get a separate aveda and he will get malchus for that. Because in other words, the kedushin is not, now you don't get the punish for that until you do bila, because the kedushin it says and you, so therefore it's dependent on consummating it. But the beila is not dependent, is not predicated on the kedushin. Therefore, bila on its own is also already aveda. And they both agree the if it takes back his former wife, that even though Abai and Rava both agree that Bia on its own, by a Kohen Gadol, without the Kiddushin before, you get Malchus just for the Veda itself, but not when it comes back, taking back your former wife. She involved with a Kiddush there. If you just just had an intimate relationship with your former wife, but you didn't get engaged, ain't like it. Why? Because dedek lekuchin asa Torah. The Torah clearly says you should not lekach lisha. Only if you take her as a wife have you committed the Isser of machzeh Kiddushin. So there, you will not be over unless you do Kiddushin first. Okay, says further, Rabbi Yehuda said, a Mishnah that a bas ger zocher ke bas chol. He said that a bas ger has the same din as a bas chol, which means that if the father is a ger, just like if the father was a chol, the daughter also has the status of a ger. Now we had a machlekes in the Mishnah. According to Eliezer and Yaakov, if one of the parents is a yid, she's already a yid, and according to Rabbi Yossi, even both parents are gedim. If she was born as a Jew, she's a yid. She's a yid. So Tanya, we learned that Rabbi Yehuda says bas ger zocher ke bas chol zocher, that the daughter of a father is a ger, even though the mother is a yid, is just like the daughter of a chol, even though the mother is a yisrael. Well, that she's possible. But I didn't know, and it makes sense. Ma chol, ma de chol sheba metipik sheda. A chol comes from a yid, even though they didn't have it, but he comes from a yid, and yet bitoy psula, if he marries a Yiddish woman, his daughter is possible. So gay sheba metipik psula, gay who comes from a non-Jewish origins, and then surely should be type psula, that his daughter should also have the status of a ger, and she should be possible to marry a kohen. So you 1 second. Why is he chol? Because his parents committed a beta. Therefore, it makes sense that he can pass on that to his son. I put a thing on the. I'll give you a quick review.
Oh, everything said 9 o'clock.
I put in the thing you didn't notice in the chat. All right, sorry, my apologies.
Don't apologize.
Okay, so we're up to Ayin Chesam at Aleph. I'll just give you a quick summary of what we're doing now. We actually will start again from the 2 dots. In the Mishnah, we had that if the father was a Chol and the mother was a Yisrael, the daughter cannot marry a Kohen. She's also a Apostle. Then we went the next step. We argued, does a Ger have the same laws or not? So Rabbi Yehuda said, if the father is a Ger and the mother is Jewish, the daughter cannot marry a kohen. Same law as the ger and the chol are the same thing, substitute one for another. Rabbi Eliezer Yaakov agreed. He said if one of the parents are Jew or is a bas Yisrael or ben Yisrael, she no longer is considered a ger. She can marry a kohen. Rabbi Yossi goes a step further, and he says that even if both parents are gedim, if they became gedim before she was conceived, and she was conceived as a yid, then she is a full-fledged yid. So now we're trying to understand Rabbi Yehuda's logic. Why does he treat the gay like a chol? So he says it's a Tanya, 4 lines into the wide lines. Daf Ayin Ches Amar Aleph. Tanya, 1 page. Ayin Ches. Ches.
No,
We did 2 blocks.
Yeah. I'll see you Monday.
Yeah, and then we're doing 2 blocks today. Ayin Ches.
Wow, you're confused.
Here we go.
All right.
Okay, good. Tanya, we learned Rabbi Yehuda says bas geir zocher is kebas chol zocher. Just like if the father was a chol, the daughter is disqualified from marrying a kohen. So too, if the daughter was if the father was a ger, the daughter is disqualified from marrying a kohen. That it makes sense. Why? Ma chol, a chol in a way is better off than a ger. Sheba Metivisheni comes from Jewish origins. Yet Bitay Psula, his daughter cannot marry a kohen. Ger Sheba Metivisheni, ger was born from non-Jewish blood. And then surely should be Psula that his daughter should be possible. Even though the mother is Jewish, if the father is a ger, that girl should not be able to marry a kohen. Says the Gemara, 1 second. A chol is much worse. Why? The chol is born out of sin. The father was a kohen, the mother was a divorcee, for example, and they married a shouldn't. So he was born out of sin. So of course it passes on to the next generation. Or the kohen got, but the case of a ger, there's no sin over there. His parents were goyim, they're allowed to live with each other. In fact, they have a mitzvah of a l'shevet also. L'shevet tzara, according to Taisus Chagiga, a little bit of a thing. The Gemara says, kohen gadol b'al manichich. No, I'll prove it to you from a kohen gadol and an almana. That what? The Kohen Gadol is born from Jewish blood. He's from Jewish blood, and yet Bita Psula. And yet his daughter is possible. So 1 second, and he himself was not formed from an Avera. He was just an ordinary Kohen Gadol. Says the Gemara, 1 second. He's committing a sin right now. It makes sense because he's committing a sin. His daughter should be also. the guy, the ger, he comes from guys parents who didn't commit a sin. He himself is not committing a sin. He married a Yiddish woman. So what's the problem? Why should his daughter be puzzled to marry a kohen? Chol yichich. One second. Chol will prove it to you. A chol is not committing a sin. When a chol marries a bas Yisrael, he's not doing any sin. But yet his daughter is forbidden to a kohen. Well, we say 1 second, but the chol, he himself was born out of sin, which again is worse than again. So so the chol was born out of sin. The kohen gadol committed a sin, but they didn't do the same thing. One committed a sin, one was born out of sin. So they have different chumras. Hatzad Hashavah man, what's the tzad Hashavah? She'ena b'reva kol. The tzad Hashavah is that they are different than most Jews. Either they were born out of sin or they committed a sin. Afani over again, I'm including again she'ena b'reva kol. Again, is different than most Yidden who were born out of from Jewish from Jews, and he wasn't. So ubita psul and the daughter is possible. We are discussing how Rabbi Yehuda's opinion of Ayin Ches and Aleph were middle of the wide lines, where Rabbi Yehuda said that just like we just learned before by a cholah, if the father was a cholah and the mother was a Yid, their daughter cannot marry a kohen because he goes after the father. So Rabbi Yehuda said if the father was a ger and the mother was a Yid, the daughter cannot marry a kohen. Lezer ben Yaakov disagrees. He says if either parent is a Yid, that's good enough. But Rabbi Yossi holds that even if they're gated, as long as they were gated before she conceived, it's good enough. But Rabbi Yehuda holds that the father is a gay, just like a cholam. We're trying to understand why. So we try to compare it. We try to say that Madach a cholam who was born out of Jewish blood, and yet the daughter is disqualified, surely a gay. So we said that a cholam, it came from an avera. And we looked at Kohen Gadol. He didn't come from Aveda, yet his daughter lived with her widow. His daughter is disqualified. We say, yeah, but he's doing a Aveda. So what we're saying is basically the bottom line is that they're both not the average Yid. A Geros is not the average Yid. He comes from Goyish blood. So therefore, the daughter is disqualified. So the last word of the line is Hashava. Ma'ala Hatzad Hashava. The last one right in the middle of the wide lines. Ma'ala Hatzad Hashava Shebhen. 1 second. At least what the Chol and the Kohen Gadol have in common is Yesh B'Tzad Aveda. It's not just not the average person. They both either they committed a sin or their parents committed a sin. A sin is involved, so it makes sense that the daughter is disqualified. But when it comes to a goy, no aveda was committed. His parents are allowed to live together and live together, according to some. And he didn't do aveda. He married a bas Yisrael. He's a ger. So what's going on here? Why should his daughter be disqualified? So I said, you're right. Forget Kohen Gadol. Late came a Kohen Gadol on money. You're right. I just shouldn't have brought it up. But rather, if a Mitzri, a first generation ger, marries a Mitzri, it's a first generation. Their children cannot marry into the Kol. They did not commit Aveda. They weren't born from Aveda. And yet their children, which is the second generation, cannot marry a Kohen. In fact, can't marry Yisrael either. 1 second. He can't marry anybody. What do you bring him? I said they can't marry even a Yid. So it's a different story. So he says, so we'll go back there. Oh, what's that? But a chol could go marry anybody he wants, yet their daughter is no good. What's the common denominator between a mitzri and a chol? They're different than most Jews. Is and the daughter is disqualified from marrying a kohen. Afani obvious again. So I'll, by the same token, that common denominator that they're different than most Yidden will be a ger because he comes from non-Jewish blood. Shame of a kol. His daughter should be puzzled to a kohen. That's a beautiful opinion. So anyway, 1 second. You know what's a common tzad shovehen? Shehem came poislim b'viyasim. If a cholo lives with a Yiddish woman, even once, she cannot marry a kohen. If a Bitzri Rishon lives with a Yiddish woman even once, she cannot marry a kohen. So they both have this power that they can unleash. They can pass the woman sideways. So therefore, they pass on the daughter vertically. A ger does not pass on a woman. A ger is allowed to marry Yiddish Yisrael. So if a ger has an affair with a Yiddish woman, she can still marry a kohen. So how do you know that the ger passels his own daughter? If he doesn't passel sideways, how do you know he passels his own daughter? What's Rabbi Yehuda get it from? But Rabbi Yehuda, he taka holds ger nami postal b'yasei. L'shitasa, he holds that a ger, if a ger lives with a penuya, even just once, she's disqualified from marrying a kohen. So since he holds that it goes sideways, he holds it goes vertical as well, and his daughter is disqualified from marrying a kohen. In fact, he learns it from right here. He learns it from right here because it's different than most people. Just like a mitzvah is different than most people. Just like a chol different than most people. And they passel if they have an affair with a woman, that woman now is disqualified from marrying a kohen, for mitzvah rishon or a chol. So Rabbi Yehuda says by the same token, a ger also. A ger also is not like Rav Kol, different than everybody. So if he lives with a woman, he disqualified her from ever marrying a kohen. Therefore, he also disqualifies his daughter just like they. But we disagree. We hold that he does not disqualify the woman that he lives with, and therefore, if he doesn't do it sideways, he doesn't do it vertically either. Okay, now Lezer Yaakov says, Lezer Yaakov says no. Lezer Yaakov says that if the mother or the father is a yid, the child is 100% yid. She can marry a kohen. Tanya, and then we had and then we had Rav Yossi says that both parents were Megaya before she conceived. The child is a full-fledged Jew, she can marry Kohen. And then we have Rashid Ben Yochai, which we brought up a while ago, not here, but he's opinion before. He holds even if the child was born as a Goy, and she was Megaya when she was 2 years old. So we learned that the parents could take her and be Megaya her. If they were Megaya when she was 2 years old, and then she became a Yid, she is not a Zoina, and therefore she could marry a Kohen. What's the reason you cannot marry a Giyayis? A Kohen can't marry a Giyayis. It comes under the category of Zoina, because Goyim are Shtufizim, and we say that it comes from a nation of people that are Zoinas, so therefore she's treated like a Zoina. But if she became before 3 years old, we say before 3 years old, her psulah, her virginity comes back, even if. So therefore, at the age of 3, in fact, it's the Yerushalmi that always brought down this Yerushalmi. It says the Kael Goymer Alai, that Yerushalmi says that halacha creates reality, and if let's say it says 3 years, the psulim come back. If that 3rd year suddenly the Chacham decided last minute to turn it into a leap year, then her psulim will come back the extra month, because halacha, that's what the Shalmi says, l'keil gomer alai, that and therefore halacha creates mitzias. So since under 3 years old, there's no such thing as losing virginity, and therefore the said of she's not a zoina. So he goes a step further. She could be born a guy and still marry a kohen if it was under 3. And they all went from one pasuk. It says that by Midian, the Abisha said that all the youngsters, the chol hataf, banoshim, that had no relations yet, you should let them live, and for you, in other words, as if you marry them. Says the Gemara, the chol hataf, the noshim, all the youngsters amongst the women, is a what? Is leave them for you that you can marry them. I mean, they gave him, the garrison. We're talking about Midian. They were going. Shimon asked a question. Sorry, Pinchas was the one who took these people there to go fight this war, and to fight Midian. And yet it says he's allowed to marry them. So we see clearly that a kohen can marry one of these girls if they were under 3 at the time. Toddlers, under 3. So more answers, no. Who said? But Abban Hechil, who said Lechem means marry them? It means la'avadim l'shvachas. That Pinchas, not that he was able to marry. Once a kohen can marry Giyadis, but rather use them as a servant, use them as a maid. Now the Gemara says, the Kulan Mikra Echa Darshu. They all darshan the same pasuk. These 4 opinions now darshan the same pasuk. If pasuk says Almana v'grusha lo yicholahem, it says that what? That it says in the Yecheskel about a kohen gadol. A kohen gadol cannot take an almana or a grusha, should not take them for wives. Kiyim, who should they take? Psules. Only virgins mezera beis Yisrael, from zera beis Yisrael. And then it says, and an almana that will be an almana from a kohen you should take. A kohen dies and leaves behind an almana, you should take. Now, obviously, he's not talking. Can't be talking about a kohen gadol. We'll see later, because kohen can't take any almana. So now the second half of the passage reverts back to an ordinary kohen. So it's like this. Rabbi Yehuda Saba, when it says ki mezera beis, psulas mezera beis Yisrael, that it has to be 100% beis Yisrael. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda holds that the father's a gay, even though the mother's a yid, that child is not appropriate for a kohen. Adi is kol zera misrael. But interesting, kol zera does not mean, because the other way around, Rabbi Yehuda is moed the other way around. If the father was a yid and the mother was a giyadis, the child could marry a kohen. So kol zera means the primary zera, the one who decides the shevet, the primary donor, which is the father. Not kol means 100%; it means the primary. Rabbi Yaakov says mizera. I feel makes a zera. Either parent. If either parent is a Yisrael, kim psulus mezera beis Yisrael. Zera beis Yisrael. If either parent is a beis Yisrael, good enough. Rabbi Yisrael, mi shenizra b'Yisrael. Rabbi Yezi says, no, I don't care who as long as when she was born, zera means when she was born, it was a beis Yisrael. Both parents are already converted, so they're Yidden. So therefore, the child is kosher for a kohen. Rabbi Shimon Yochai holds Misha Nizru Psuleh. What does the pasuk say? Psulah is based Israel. The pasuk says Psulas. Bezera based Israel. The Psulas have to be at the time when does a girl have a Psulas? 3 years old. So at that age, at 3 years old, she has to be Yid. That's very hard. It can't be the normal Rav Nachman we have in Shas. We could go back to this pasuk because Rav Nachman was Rav's teacher. It's Rav Nachman, but remember, Taisus holds it's Rav Nachman by Yaakov who's the teacher. So this is Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. Rashi holds. Sorry.
That last case, the only difference is if she was.
So the four opinions are
when she was born. So
according to Shimon Yochai, if the parents were Megaya when she was 2 years old, took her with them. And now, according to Rashi, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak is Rav Nachman, not Rashi, but Rashi himself is. So this must be Rav Nachman by Yaakov, because they're asking Rav a question. It's impossible Rav Nachman, Rav's teacher, would be asking Rav a question. Anyway, this passage doesn't make sense. The beginning it says don't marry an almana, so we're talking to a kohen gadol, and then it says only take an almana who comes from a kohen. But who's he talking to? Must be talking about the kohen hedyot. It's only taking almana that comes from a pure breed. So how do you have one pasuk talking to two different people? High coronation becoming gadol, the same kohen hedyot. Doesn't make sense. Yes, we find it in other occasions as well. Because of krahachi. So yes, the pasuk. So Rav Nachman asks Rav, that's how you write a pasuk. Definitely besides Rav Nachman or Rav Nachman. Yes, I'll give an example. By Shmuel, it says by Shmuel, before he extinguished, Shmuel Sheikh was young. By Eliyahu Kohen was under, he was his prodigy. Shmuel Sheikh Shmuel was lying there in the Heichel of Hashem. It says there that we're talking about a candle for extinguished. Shmuel lying in the Heichel of Hashem. That there was the Aron Elokim. Shmuel was lying where the Aron was. How could it be? There's no yeshiva. You're not allowed to sit in the Azara. That's it. Elo Malke Bedobavad. Elo Neid Elokim Terim Yifke Beheichel Hashem. So that we break the pasuk. The pasuk is talking about two different things. One part of the pasuk is talking about describing what's happening in the Beis Hamikdash. The other part of the pasuk is describing Shmuel. So we read and then we jump to the end of the pasuk. Beheichel Hashem. That's talking about the Heichel Hashem. And then another part in the middle of the pasuk is talking something else altogether. Shmuel Sheikh Shmuel was lying in his place. So we find that psukim, and this is even worse. If you take this, it's right in the middle of the pasuk, which breaks up the two halves which got connected. In Musa Svarim it says, why Takit is written this way? To tell you that when a person sleeps, you should feel like you're in Heichel Hashem. And that's why you have the laws of Tznius in the beginning of Shulchan Aruch. So to tell you that you have to think that, Shavisi Hashem and Summit, and that's when Shmuel was sleeping, it was Shmuel Sheikh, he felt as if it was by Heichel Hashem. Telling about it further, it says in the passage, and who should you take? We're talking about the Kohen head, you take a widow from a Kohen. The Kohen in Yisrael, what is there an issue for a Kohen to marry the widow of Yisrael? Since when? The Kohen Yikachu, Mishar Yikoyenim Yikachu. That we're talking about an ordinary Kohen, and therefore we're saying that we're trying to tell you that we're not talking anymore about the Kohen Gadol. So we're talking about we bring in only one Kohen Gadol. We're talking about there's a number of Kohenim here, and Kohenim can marry an almana. It doesn't matter if it's from Yisrael, it's from a Kohen. But as long as you can marry the widow of other Kohenim, Yisrael as well. But the pasuk is trying to give us a clue. We're no longer talking about the Kohen Gadol. So therefore, it says Kohen Hashem. He says Almana. What's the pasuk here? He says that Almana mekoyin yikachu. That you could take an Almana from other Kohenim. So who we're talking about? We're talking about Kohenim now. We're no longer talking about a Kohen Gadol. Tell you what we learned. Other Kohenim. No, Abuda said, you know why it says that? To tell you that you should only marry a widow, even a widow of someone else, only if their daughter, this widow, if she got married to somebody, her daughter is qualified to marry a Kohen. Always make sure you marry someone with a good yichus here. Don't marry the almana, for example, of a ger. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda, if you remember, Rabbi Yehuda just told us if the father is a ger, the daughter is disqualified. So don't marry his almana either. We just said before, Rabbi Yehuda holds that the ger passes his widow from marrying a kohen. And that's why he holds the daughter also disqualified. That's what he meant to say. Min kohen yikachu, only somebody who can marry a kohen. That the daughter of a ger is like a daughter of a chol. If you can marry his daughter, you can marry his widow. Which Rabbi Yehuda holds he cannot marry his daughter. We hold he could, but he holds he can't. He cannot marry his widow. Even the both gave him as long as they converted before she was born, she was conceived, everything is good. Amar Rabbi Nuna, Mashmei Nula, halacha k'Rabbi Yosi. Halacha actually Rabbi Yosi. Halacha k'Rabbi Yosi. But from the time of the destruction of Beis Mikdash, nagu kainim silsul ba'atum. Now this is very interesting. You would think in the times of the Beis Mikdash, when they were serving the Beis Mikdash, the kainim would be very machmir. Once the Beis Mikdash is destroyed, they would relax some of the laws. And here is a punkt. While the Beis Mikdash was upstanding, they followed Rabbi Yosi that a ger and a geyeris had a child daughter. Yeah, as long as she was conceived when the parents were Yidden, a kohen would marry her. But after the Churban Beis Mikdash, they felt they have to feel that they're still involved in the Yonim of Kedusha, so they took on extra chumras to keep on reminding them that they're kohenim. Because we had more time is that the Behedi Yibana Beis Mikdash, they shouldn't drink because they have to always be ready. In order for them to be ready, they took on extra chumras, so they did no longer marry the daughter of parents who were both gated, even though the child was born when they were Yidden already. They wouldn't marry the girl, and this is what reminded them that they were kohenim. Very interesting. That's when they started to took on this chumrah. If somebody comes to ask a shaila, if they ask a shaila, they would say the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and that is what. Make sure that one of the parents is a yid before you. If you're a kohen, don't marry the daughter unless one of the parents is a yid. Or the nasa. Even today, if a kohen married a girl that both parents are gated, we do not take them out like Rabbi Yosi, because halacha technically is like Rabbi Yosi. Mishnah. We learned before that the fathers believed regarding his son. If a father says my child is a mamzer, he's believed to say my child is a b'chayr, but not a mamzer. Even if the mother says, yes, I acknowledge that this child is not my husband. Very hard to understand. We believe mamzer, even if we talk about the fetus before the child was born. No, it was the first case, the child had a cheskes kashis. He was born, everybody thought he was a good child. Now you come along and say he's a mamzer. Okay, you cannot, demolish a cheskes kashis. But if it's in the mother's womb, there's no chazaka, wasn't born yet. Even then, ain't the money. Rabbi Yehuda says no money. Rabbi Yehuda says, I believe he's arguing in both cases. You do believe that. Doesn't matter. My Bafilish name, what do you mean even both agree? What do you mean even they both agree? If you don't believe, you don't believe. I'm telling you, you don't have to say if the father comes along and says, my child's a mamzer, the late kimle, he doesn't really know. But she knows. And this part is very difficult to understand. What do you mean he doesn't know? If he didn't have any relations with her for the last 9 months, then he knows it wasn't him. Why is he any worse off? Why is he believed less than her? And if he did have relations with her all this time, and how does she know it didn't come from him? Or she's a maven, she knows exactly whose sperm made it happen. How's it work exactly? So unless the pshat is he doesn't really know if there was any infidelity there. He doesn't really know. So therefore, when he says something, he's saying maybe. She knows his infidelity. So even though she cannot say definitively that this came from that person rather than my husband, but at least she can say there's a suffix. She can create a suffix because she can say I was involved with another person. What happens? Maybe that's pshat. The kimla, she knows whether there were other people involved. She is not believed. The child that has kashas, we don't believe them. We don't believe them at all. Abuda says you do believe them. How do we know? Tanya, we already learned before the Braisa. That want that the father announces to others, this is the b'chayr. The kana b'Yehuda neman adam leima zeh b'ni b'chayr. You believe to say my son is a b'chayr. Ukashem sheneman adam leima zeh b'ni b'chayr. Just like he's believed to say my son is b'chayr. Kach neman adam leima zeh ben grusha. He's believed to say that this son is the son of a divorcee. But zeh ben grusha. He can disqualify his son. Why did Yehuda hold that? Because we learned before. Tosha says that. Rabbi Yehuda is saying by the Ben Snua, where he's saying that this is my b'chayr. Everybody can see it's the oldest kid. What's a b'chayr? We can see he was the oldest. So it's talking about that he was actually the youngest, and yet the father said this b'chayr, you believe him. So what about all the other brothers there? Obviously they're all mamzeidim, and yet we believe the father. It's a raya that we believe the father even to disqualify others. He can disqualify anybody he wants. So Chacham say no, ain't in them is not believed. Just stop shutting the pasuk. He's talking about that. It's Amalei, but Rabbi Yehuda, I understand why the Torah has to tell you that the father can determine who the b'chayr is. To tell you that the child is puzzle. El Rabbanan, all he's doing is telling you that the child is the oldest. What do you need a pasuk for? Yaakov Amalei. But we're talking about in a case where you need to know the b'chayr. So when do you need to know that he's the b'chayr? Lost Pishnayim. When you divide the estate, that he gets a double portion. Says the Gemara, and if you didn't have the pasuk, pshita. Lama likra need a pasuk for. Doesn't he have a migui? Let's say the pasuk wouldn't say that you believe him, but every father, if he wants, he can give him. Let's say he wants to give him an extra $100. He can give him an extra $100 before he dies. So he has a migui, and if he has a migui, you believe what he says. Migui boy mesel matana if he wants to give her a gift. Mila Yavle can't give him? So we answer, we're talking about a case, no. At the time when he said it, he didn't have yet these estates. So it's a dover shaloi bala olam. So there's no miga. You can't make a miga about something that you can't even give if you want to do. I said, I'll give you everything that I'm going to get tomorrow. You can't do that because it's a dover shaloi bala olam. And yet the Torah says he's believed that when it comes to divide the estate, he'll get double because the father says yakir. He's yakir. You could make such a deal. You could say to your son, everything I'm going to earn, I'm going to get in the next, all my windfalls in the next 6 months are yours. So he still has a miga. What happens while he's a goisis? He's dying that suddenly he gets a windfall. So Rashi learns a goisis cannot make kinyonim. So he says, why not? So he says, not that you can't. Practically speaking, he has other things on his mind right now, and he's not making kinyonim. But Rashi holds api halacha. A goisis cannot make kinyonim. Therefore, there's no migui anymore. And if at the time then he says so, then yakir. Okay, we'll stop here and then we'll do another block. Okay. Today's daf is daf ayin test.